The fog in Evershade wasn't like fog anywhere else. It didn't roll or drift, it settled. It clung to windows, oozed through cracks, and whispered along the ground as though it had somewhere to go, or worse, somewhere it had already been. And when the iron gates of Willowmere Orphanage creaked open on a chilly October evening, that fog seemed to part just long enough to allow one small figure through. Elsie Harper, age 10, stepped out of the rattling car, gripping a worn suitcase with both hands. Her shoes were second-hand and a size too large, her coat thin and threadbare, and her hair hung in dark, unbrushed strands around her pale face. The social worker, Mrs. Langley, leaned out of the driver's seat, her breath fogging the air. "This is it, sweetheart. Your new home." Elsie didn't answer. She only stared up at the looming building, 4 stories of gray stone, black shutters hanging like eyelids over tall, narrow windows. A cracked wooden sign read Willowmere Orphanage, its paint faded and the wood splintered. "Now remember," Mrs. Langley said softly, getting out and helping with the suitcase, "Miss Elspeth runs things here. She's a bit stern, but fair. And the children, well, just give them time. Everyone here's lost something." Elsie nodded but didn't speak. Her eyes had drifted beyond the building, to the tree. It towered behind the orphanage, a monster silhouette against the dying light. Gnarled branches bent like arthritic fingers, thick roots coiled above the ground like veins, and the trunk bulged with knots like old wounds. It was blackened, like it had been struck by lightning, yet it stood strong, almost defiant. "That's the knocking tree," said a voice behind her. Elsie turned. A boy stood by the entrance, maybe 12, with sandy hair and deep-set eyes. He wore a navy sweater with the sleeves too short. His name, stitched in red thread on a tag, read Tom. "They say it knocks at night," he added, as though it were a casual fact. "Knocks?" Elsie echoed. "On your window. Or your wall. Or inside your dreams, if you're lucky." Mrs. Langley sighed. "Tom, please. Not tonight." But the boy only grinned and slipped inside, his footsteps echoing through the entry hall. Elsie's heart beat faster, but she said nothing as she followed Mrs. Langley up the steps and into the orphanage. Inside, the air smelled of mildew and wax. Faded wallpaper peeled in long curls, and the wooden floorboards groaned underfoot like old bones. A tall woman with a tightly tied bun and a high-necked black dress stood at the base of the staircase. "Miss Elspeth," Mrs. Langley said with a polite nod. "This is Elsie Harper." "She's—" "I know who she is," the woman said curtly, her voice sharp as winter wind. "Come. Supper has passed. She'll eat in the kitchen." Elsie opened her mouth to speak, but the woman had already turned and begun walking down a dim corridor. And somewhere, far off, muffled by stone and silence, something knocked. Elsie sat alone at a wooden kitchen table, her fingers curled around a chipped porcelain bowl. The soup was thin and lukewarm, tasting faintly of potatoes and something metallic. The kitchen smelled of old onions and scorched wood. Copper pans hung above the stove, each darkened with age. A tall grandfather clock ticked methodically in the corner, as if counting down something unseen. Miss Elspeth stood silently by the doorway, watching her eat. She hadn't spoken a word since leading her in. Just stood, arms folded, eyes like iron nails. Elsie swallowed. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely audible. Miss Elspeth didn't answer. After a moment, she turned on her heel and left, the door creaking shut behind her. Alone, Elsie exhaled. The silence was heavy here, like it carried memories that refused to die. She looked around, half expecting something to move in the shadows. A chair. A curtain. A face in the window. Instead, she heard it again, very faint, behind the wall this time. Knock. 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 She froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. Her eyes flicked toward the sound. It was coming from the far wall, brick, behind a low pantry shelf. But she saw nothing. Heard nothing more. The knock didn't come again, later, After being shown a narrow bed in a long, drafty room lined with cots, she unpacked her small suitcase. 2 dresses. 1 pair of socks. A cracked music box from her mother, which no longer played. She placed it carefully on the nightstand. Around her, other children were already in bed, some whispering to each other. She heard the familiar hush of blankets pulled over heads, the creak of springs, the distant sighs of dreams beginning. Tom was already tucked in across the aisle. He caught her gaze. "They knock 3 times, he whispered. "Always 3. If you hear more than that, run." "Why?" He rolled onto his side. "Because 3 is the invitation. More than that means they're already inside." Elsie swallowed and slid under the covers. The window above her head groaned softly as a gust of wind pressed against the pane. She looked out and saw it again, that terrible silhouette. The tree. Its branches looked like they had moved since this morning. One long limb now extended closer toward the orphanage wall, as if reaching, creeping. She closed her eyes. Just wind. Just shadows. She dreamed of fingers tapping against the glass. Midnight brought a silence so deep it felt unnatural. Not even the wind dared speak. Elsie lay wide awake in her cot, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Around her, the other children slept, some snoring softly, others twitching in their dreams. The moonlight filtered through the old lace curtains, casting pale webs across the floor. Then it came. Knock. 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 Her breath caught. It was real this time. Not a dream. Not her imagination. The sound came from her window. 3 precise knocks, slow and deliberate. She turned her head. The curtain stirred slightly, though the window was closed. She sat up slowly, gripping her blanket. Her heart pounded in her chest, so loud she thought it might wake the others. "It's just a tree," she whispered. "A branch. Wind." She crept toward the window, pushing the curtain aside just a little. Outside, the knocking tree stood still. But something was different. One of the thick branches touched the wall directly below her window now, close enough to reach it. She leaned closer. Her breath fogged the glass. Suddenly, something moved, quick, small, like a flash of shadow across the ground. She stepped back fast, her heel catching the leg of the bed. She stumbled and fell, hitting the floor with a soft thud. Someone stirred in their bed. Tom. He sat up, rubbing his eyes. "You heard it, didn't you?" Elsie nodded slowly. "It always starts like that," he said grimly. "It wants to know who's new. Have you ever opened it?" He shook his head. "Only one kid ever did. A girl named Ruth. That was 2 years ago." "What happened to her?" "She vanished. In the middle of the night. No one ever found her. Just a scrap of her dress caught on the tree bark." Elsie felt cold all over. Tom lowered his voice. "Don't talk to it. Don't look for it. Don't answer the knock." By morning, the knocking felt like a bad dream. The sunlight spilled through the dormitory windows, and the children rose and dressed in silence. The air still felt damp with mist, but the shadows had receded, for now. In the dining hall, Elsie sat with a plate of oatmeal, watching the others. No one spoke much. They all kept glancing out the window, toward the tree. Tom sat across from her, quietly stirring his breakfast. Miss Elspeth stood by the door, unmoving, arms folded behind her back. Her eyes swept the room like searchlights. Elsie leaned forward. "Has anyone ever cut it down?" Tom shook his head. "They tried once. A long time ago. Story is, the groundskeeper back then took an axe to it. But before he even landed a second blow, he fell. Split his head open on a root. They said he tripped. And no one tried again?" Tom shrugged. "They buried him near the back fence. The tree grew taller after that." Elsie pushed her oatmeal away. "What is it?" He didn't answer. He just glanced toward the window. The tree, unmoved. And yet, it was closer. Later that day, Elsie was assigned chores. She dusted the hallways with an old rag and a feather duster, while Miss Elspeth's heavy boots echoed up and down the stairs. As she worked her way toward the attic stairwell, she passed a door she hadn't seen before. It was smaller than the others, tucked beside the library. Old and warped, with peeling green paint. No knob. Just a keyhole, rimmed with rust. Curious, she pressed her ear against it. Inside, silence. Then, barely audible. Knock. 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 She staggered back, heart hammering. The sound stopped. She looked around, no one had heard. Just her. Again. She reached for the door, but Tom's voice rang out from behind her. Don't. That's the door to the east wing. She turned. What's in there? No one goes in there anymore. It was closed off after the fire. They say it's where the first child disappeared. Elsie stepped away slowly. Behind the door, something scratched faintly against the wood. That night, Elsie cornered one of the older girls, Nora, while brushing her teeth. What happened in the fire? Nora rolled her eyes. Old stories. Elspeth says it was an accident, but the East Wing's cursed. Everyone knows it. Cursed how? Ask too many questions and the knocking starts. And it doesn't stop. Not until someone opens a door. Or a window. She smirked. It likes the curious ones best. Elsie slept fitfully. The wind moaned. The building creaked. And again, just before sleep took her. Knock. 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 This time, there was something more. After the knocking. A whisper. A breath against her cheek. Elsie. She sat bolt upright. Her window was closed. The curtains drawn. She heard something scurry across the floor. A faint laugh. She leapt from her bed and rushed to Tom. It said my name. He sat up, eyes wide. Then it's chosen you. The next day, while dusting the East Hall again, she noticed something strange. On the old windowsill, someone, or something, had written in the dust. Let me in. She wiped it away with her sleeve, heart pounding. But by the time she returned an hour later, it was back. Let me in, Elsie. That evening, Miss Elspeth sent Elsie to fetch potatoes from the cellar. She descended the narrow stone steps with a lantern. The air was thick, musty. Earthy. But worse than that, something was growing there. Roots. From the ceiling and the walls. Thick, black ones, pulsing faintly, like veins. Like the tree had spread underground. She backed away, and heard it. Behind her. Knock. 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 Something moved in the shadows. A figure. Small. Thin. Help me, it whispered. It was Tom. Or, it looked like Tom. But his eyes were wrong, dark, hollow. Come closer, the thing said, voice rasping. It's warm in the roots. She screamed and ran, the lantern swinging wildly. Behind her, the knocking turned into pounding. Miss Elspeth found her crying in the hall. You've been listening, haven't you? She asked quietly. Elsie nodded. Miss Elspeth knelt, her face softer now. Tired. The tree feeds on attention. The more you notice it, the more it notices you. Then why don't we leave? No one leaves Willowmere. Elsie began to dream of roots wrapping around her body, pulling her into the ground. She'd wake with scratches on her arms, mud under her fingernails. Tom stayed close now, never far. You've got 2 nights left, he told her. If you don't answer, it'll choose someone else. But if you do, you'll never leave. That night, thunder cracked above Evershade. Rain pelted the roof like stones. The children huddled together in their beds. But the knocking still came. Knock. 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 Louder now. And this time, so did a voice. I see you, Elsie. Elsie couldn't take it anymore. She rose from bed, walked to the window, and opened the curtain. The branch was there, almost touching the glass. And on it, fingers. A pale hand curled around the wood. Tapping. She reached for the latch. Before she could open it, Tom tackled her to the floor. Don't, he shouted. The window flew open on its own. Wind howled through the room. The other children screamed. The tree groaned. A face formed in the bark, half her own, half something else. And it whispered, "Let me finish growing."